Since 1953, the National Hurricane Center has named each strong storm in our hurricane waters. These names help us to identify these storms more easily when scouring the history books. They also give each storm something to differentiate from their counterparts, at least in the short term. I say short term because there are only 6 unique name lists, and they are reused season after season. This means a particular set of names is reused once every 6 years. This leads to different storms of different decades sharing the same name. For instance, the name Alice was used 8 times from 1970 through 1980 alone, or Nancy, which has been used 17 times since 1953, or Ida, which was also used 17 times before retirement in 2021. There are 126 total names in rotation. But there is only one name that stands above them all, especially in the US. It will never be used again after its life in August of 2005. The name has become a grim image of its destruction, and you know which name I am talking about. August 19th, 2005, a rogue tropical wave and the remnants of Tropical Depression 10 would undergo a merger near the Lesser Antilles Islands. 4 days later, Tropical Depression 12 would form after organization of this merger. Just 1 day later, we were introduced to the infamous name, Katrina, as it strengthened to tropical storm status on the morning of the 24th. Following suit, Katrina was strengthened to hurricane status as it made landfall near Miami on the morning of August 25th. Of course, Katrina weakened while moving over the Florida basin, but within the first hour of reaching the Gulf waters, she re-strengthened. The sea surface temperatures of the Gulf at this time were in the mid to upper 80s, more than enough to produce a hurricane. After departing the west coast of Florida on Thursday, Katrina would reach wind speeds of at least 115 miles per hour on Saturday, becoming a Category 3 hurricane, reaching major hurricane status as she continued westward across the Gulf. Once she reached major hurricane status, an eye replacement cycle occurred. This is when the outer bands of thunderstorms become so strong they form a ring of convection that moves in on the eye of the storm. The original eye gets choked out, and the storm initially weakens, but these thunderstorms then form the storm's new eye and allow for re-strengthening. It's the process of replacing the eye with a stronger one. When this happened, Katrina was allowed to rapidly intensify. Rapid intensification is when a storm increases in maximum sustained winds at least 35 miles per hour in just a 24-hour period. Katrina intensified much more than that and in less time, and possibly the most impressive feat of the Gulf up to that point in history. She strengthened into a Category 5 hurricane, reaching maximum winds of 175 miles per hour, and more than doubled in size in just a 9-hour window. It was that morning, August 28th, 2005, that Katrina's millibar reading was 902. That made her the fifth most powerful Atlantic hurricane up to that point, only to be surpassed by Rita and Wilma later that year. As a result, the National Weather Service office in New Orleans posted a statement that is now known as the Doomsday Message. I encourage you to pause the video and read the entire message to understand the urgency of the situation. Katrina would make her second landfall as a Category 3 before the afternoon of August 29th, and the rest is history. Hurricane force winds extended 120 miles inland. 53 breaches occurred to New Orleans' levee system. Catastrophic flooding that some would call biblical. The city of New Orleans, like called by the National Weather Service, was an uninhabitable wasteland. Not to mention the poor disaster response, but this video would be 2 hours long if I went over that subject. You may be wondering why I haven't talked about the main subject of the video yet. After all, the title is The Untold Story, but everything I've told you so far is common knowledge. But what if I told you that was the purpose? Rightfully so, national news locked their eyes onto the city of New Orleans, as it was underwater. But New Orleans was only one city affected by this monster. In the coming weeks, but especially today, the cameras would expand to the Mississippi coast. You'll hear cities like Biloxi, Gulfport, and Bay St. Louis in documentaries or YouTube videos today. But Katrina remained a hurricane well into Mississippi. But that story, to my knowledge, has never been told. It's a story of damage, but beauty. This is East Central Mississippi's untold Katrina story. During the morning hours of August 29th, residents of East Central Mississippi woke up to an abnormally cool morning. High temperatures over the previous week had peaked in the mid 90s, but on that Monday, a cool breeze was blowing off Katrina's outer bands, keeping the highs that day at just 82 degrees. There was a certain peaceful aspect to this calm before the storm. But very soon, many lives would be changed for the worse. The outer bands of Katrina could have started dumping rain over east central Mississippi as early as 1 a.m. that morning, another factor keeping conditions cooler than normal. Landfall of Katrina would occur on the coast around 11 a.m. It was this time that Katrina would start bending the air in the vertical direction as well. 57 tornadoes touched down across 8 states because of Katrina, meeting the threshold to be classified as a tornado outbreak. 10 of these twisters touched down in east central Mississippi alone during the early afternoon hours, associated with the stronger outer bands of the hurricane. The highest rated tornadoes occurred in Neshoba County, south of House, and Newton County, north of Decatur, both earning an F2 rating. The F2 in Newton County briefly touched down at 12:06 p.m. near Good Hopewell Road and tracked across said road for a path of just 1 mile. While very short lived, its strength was potent, as almost all trees within a half-mile radius were uprooted or damaged. And these weren't small trees either, most likely being large pines with diameters of 3 to 4 feet. Just one home sustained minimal damage as some shingles were lost to the winds. The F2 in Neshoba County touched down at 12:27 p.m. and moved southeastward for 3 miles over mostly rural area. In the 100-yard wide damage swath, several hundred trees were uprooted or snapped, with a few homes sustaining damage from those fallen trees. Additionally, numerous power lines were downed along State Highway 492. 8 more tornadoes will be reported in the region over the next hour, including the longest track storm, an F1 north of Chunky that downed numerous trees that caused minor roof damage to several homes over its 13-mile track, an F1 north of Meridian along Highway 45 that snapped numerous trees and power lines, another F1 in Lauderdale County, northeast of Shucktown near Highway 493. It moved northwest into Kemper County and snapped numerous trees and several outbuildings sustained damage. An F1 northeast of McDonald in Neshoba County that downed numerous trees and power lines. An F1 west of Damascus that done the same. Another Neshoba F1, this time west of Deweese, near Highway 491, and downed numerous trees, a couple of which fell on mobile homes, completely destroying one and inflicting major damage to the other. An F1 northwest of Philadelphia that touched down near Highway 15, just south of the Philadelphia Municipal Airport, and did little besides down trees. And finally, an F1 north of Edinburgh in Leake County that downed more trees. The total estimated damage cost from the tornadoes alone was $2.2 million. But the true cost of these storms wouldn't be money. It would be the amount of trees that had already fallen. City crews were deployed early to clear roadways, especially busy highways like 491, 492, 493, 45, and 15. Also, know some people lost power during these tornadoes and may have used their generator, using up precious hours that could have been saved for after Katrina's true carnage. After the outer band tornado event to start the afternoon, Katrina moved northward through the state. Around 8 p.m. that night, the collapsing eye of the storm would enter east central Mississippi, still maintaining hurricane status at Category 1. Like a sucker punch, 110-mile-per-hour winds would slam into the southern portion of the region. The eye of the storm would track directly through the center of the region, specifically Newton County. Over 1,800 homes would be damaged in the county from the eye. Katrina would weaken to a tropical storm over the northern half of east central Mississippi in the next few hours, but not before leaving swaths of hurricane force damage. Much less damaging than the rain, there was an estimated 3 to 5 inches of rainfall totaled from all storm bands. This did leave some areas with flash flooding and standing water, but nothing like the array of downed trees. Most damage reported from Hurricane Katrina's eye was associated with downed trees. The Carrion Ledger reported on August 30th that trees were down in Scott, Lauderdale, and Leake County. The Newton Record, now Newton County Appeal, reported many homes in and around Newton that saw extensive tree damage and downed power lines as well. These trees did a lot of damage themselves, but also made travel extremely difficult. In the same report from the Carrion Ledger, a tree in Leake County fell on a woman driving down Mississippi 488 near Carthage, and she was killed upon impact. Some of these trees were large, possibly pine trees, and would do massive damage to homes that found themselves under their weight. And it wasn't surprising that all these trees were falling, given how strong the hurricane force winds were. 110 miles per hour was the estimated winds in Jones County, possibly remaining near 100 as it neared Newton County. The athletic complex at East Central Community College was heavily damaged, specifically the football field, as the east side bleachers were overturned and a large portion of the press box was blown away. Many report watching the trees bend over and touch the ground with how strong these straight line winds were. Forest and Meridian possibly saw the worst structural damage associated with strong winds. Meridian, the largest metropolitan city in east central Mississippi, had a lot of businesses and schools sustain roof damage, including the Tuxedo schools, who lost their roof completely. A few buildings in Lauderdale County had the front walls blown out with how strong the winds were near the surface. Most likely, the peak of these wind gusts were over 100 miles per hour through the night. Based upon my very rough estimations, the bleachers at East Central, the ones that were tossed around, weighed approximately 3 to 4,000 pounds. The wind speeds needed to displace such a heavy but unanchored structure would be anywhere from 60 to 90 miles per hour. I also know that East Central Mississippi saw a lot of pine tree damage, even though pines are extremely strong and resilient against winds. That's why I lean towards sustained winds, being at least 90 miles per hour, and possibly gusting over 100 to knock down some of those larger trees. While structural damage wasn't as widespread as the coast, the east central Mississippi region saw extensive damage, with some calling it the worst they had ever seen, even more than the numerous tornadoes that tracked through the area throughout history. Damage cost estimations are very difficult to total, but my best guess is anywhere from $5 to $10 million. And I'm even leading closer to the top end of that estimation, given the extensive tree damage, massive roof damage, and already over $2 million cost of tornado damage. In the early morning hours of Tuesday, August 30th, 2005, the destructive winds finally died down. The rain stopped falling, and the calm conditions of the morning of the 29th were found again. Except this time, the cool winds were blowing across a sea of damage, communities unrecognizable from the day before, and across a community that was devastated, yet determined. In the wake of Katrina's destruction, Governor Haley Barbour declared a state of disaster. This typically includes the deployment of the National Guard, FEMA, and other relief agencies to help the affected areas. Rescue teams were deployed mostly in New Orleans and somewhat on the Mississippi coast. This left very little government support for the people of the east central Mississippi region. The only direct support from the National Guard that I have heard of was a dispersion of MREs 10 days after Katrina's impact. By that time, most, if not all, residents of the region had no power and some had no water. Power outages across the region lasted anywhere from 8 to 14 days, with some towns losing water for 2 to 7. The August heat over the next week would shoot back up into norms, making the lack of air conditioning even more pressing. Many would be forced to live in their yards for over a week. Possibly the most impactful shortage was ice, the only thing that brought relief. One of the only sources of ice in the region was the ice plant in Meridian. MEMA and relief agencies used the ice plant to deliver to more than just neighboring communities. Meridian's stock of ice would be split between east central Mississippi, and a large order that was sent to Hattiesburg to help assist relief closer to the coast. People were desperate for this ice, doing anything they could to get their hands on it. Some even attempted to steal the ice off of the trucks heading down to Hattiesburg. People would pull out in front of the truck to stop the transit and steal product. And while many of their efforts were not successful, you could see how tensions were rising in the region. Official ice distribution would be organized in Decatur, Newton, and Little Rock on the 30th. Not everyone could even get out to these spots because the roads weren't clear yet, or they had no gas, another hot yet slim commodity. Katrina knocked out gas across the state. A few stations in Meridian had a few pumps available, but the line to those pumps were very long, and there was a limit on how much gas you could get. If you were fortunate enough to get gas, you could get around places like Meridian and Newton quite easily, as cleanup was completed early in efforts. It was the back roads that kept people trapped in their homes. Many trees were still blocking the roadways, relying on local volunteers to assist in cleanup. If it wasn't for the people of the community standing up for one another, bringing a chainsaw to clear the road, grabbing bags of ice and handing them out, bringing food and supplies, then East Central Mississippi would have never been cleaned up. National resources and attention were on New Orleans and the coast, with some resources in East Central Mississippi being ordered to other areas for relief instead of their own communities. While the destruction Katrina caused was devastating, there was a certain beauty in the connections that formed over communities coming together and helping one another. If it wasn't for the people of East Central Mississippi, the places in East Central Mississippi would have never been cleaned or repaired for weeks. Yesterday was the 20th anniversary of that fateful day. The day the name Katrina will be engraved in every Mississippian's mind. When the resilience of a community is so strong, doesn't matter how strong the winds blow, how many trees fall, how many roofs are lost, the story will never be forgotten, even if it wasn't published in the first place. Because of the effort of the community, East Central Mississippi has rebuilt well since August of 2005, and in some places, built back better. Union, which sustained ample tree damage and lost water for an entire week, has revitalized its downtown area since the storm, bringing back its small town charm. During Katrina, East Central Community College saw major damage to its athletic facilities. Now, they are some of the best in the state, if not all of JUCO sports teams. Their bleachers are even bigger and better than before, sitting the Decatur faithful every Thursday night. West Church Street in Newton was covered in downed trees from Katrina. Now it's home to the beautiful Faith Baptist Church and sort of newly renovated City Hall. 20 years ago, many in East Central Mississippi had their lives rocked by a storm for the ages. Sure, the wounds healed, but the scars will never disappear. They'll only fade. The streets are clean, the wind is calm, but one thing has continued since Katrina: a story that, unlike the damage, will never be swept away. Sometimes the stories that aren't told have the best endings. Sometimes it takes a storm to truly heal a community. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's not the damage, it's not the lack of support or the lack of coverage. It's the people. That is truly Katrina's untold story. Before I close this video, I need to shout out some people. Jason Neese, who provided insight of what it was like being a volunteer during relief. Marty Morgan, who helped supply me some research resources. And my mother, who detailed me her Katrina story. Every single one of you watching have your own Katrina story, and I encourage you to leave it in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video and have felt that your voice was heard for the first time when watching a documentary or video about Hurricane Katrina. I hope the story of East Central Mississippi's resilience will be told for years to come. And that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, I hope to see you all next time.